know that BYU dominated South Florida, and you know that Utah went to Florida, the swamp, and I know there were people saying the grass was slippery.
Hey, guys.
At the swamp.
Sounds like an excuse.
It doesn't matter. Utah went and beat themselves against the Florida Gators. Who do you feel better about coming out of that?
I mean, I think I'm pretty close on both. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and hit the panic button on Utah because they lost a tight game on the road, and frankly, a game that really for them should have been won. And that's why, like, all this noise on Twitter about like, hey, like Utah wasn't good enough, and Anthony Richardson had some coming out party. It's absolute trash because Anthony Richardson didn't really do anything. If correct me, I think he had 170 yards and was like a 61% passer. Like, it's not like the guy came out for 400 yards on 70% passing. I mean, this is somebody who did a lot of damage on the ground with his legs and frankly did a lot of damage after first contact. You had an opportunity to bring this guy down in the backfield, I mean, probably 7-8 times, and it really just did not happen. And that's why I say, as much as, you have to give Florida credit, Utah should have won this football game. And that's why when you ask me, hey, who do I feel better about? Well, I'm pretty confident in some guy named Kyle Whittingham to get his team to tackle better. I'm pretty confident in Kyle Whittingham to get that defense going. And ultimately, I'm not worried about the pick at the end for Cam Rising. I think that's going to happen. And so, for me, that's why I say I'm pretty even. I'm not going to overreact to the South Florida win for BYU. You handled your business. This is a team you should have beat. You should have handled. Like, not going to overreact to that. And I don't think we should overreact to Utah. I think they didn't execute, and I would expect much better for them in week 2.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the experience factor, when you look at the linebackers, you look at, what Utah is replacing. They have a lot of guys that they believed in and needed. I mean, you look at Britton Covey, Devon Vele only had 3 catches against Florida, and I will continue to say Devon Vele is one of the most important players on this Utah offense because I think we all know what Brant Keithy can do. I think we all know what Dalton Kincaid's capable of.
Are we clear on that?
But you don't have a receiver that you can count on who every time you throw him the ball, 9 times out of 10 he's going to catch it and he's going to make a positive play out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know that we could say that about Devon Vele at this point. I'm with you. I'm not really worried about the interception from Cam Rising. You're in a 2-minute situation in the red zone. You'd love to see a touchdown there. But that throw is not why they lost the game. They lost the game because they didn't tackle. I mean, in the first half alone, you had 3 opportunities to get off the field on 3rd down, and you missed a tackle in the backfield. I mean, basic fundamentals of defense, Utah didn't execute in those areas, and that's something. Well, that's something that Kyle Whittingham's going to clean up. So I am not going to sit here and hit the panic button on Utah. I don't see this as any huge loss. The thing that you have to understand now, though, is now you got to pick up the ball and you got to make positive change. I mean, unfortunately for Southern Utah, and I mean unfortunately, you're going to come into Rice Eccles, and I think you're probably going to get some last will and testaments done on the field. Like,
I'm a fucking unit.
Well, I mean, I think some guys are going to get hit. I expect fast physical football out of the 1s and 2s from Utah, and I expect that to be 3/4 of football. And then in 2 weeks with San Diego State, that's the game where you've got to come out, Jake, and I just don't think there can be any excuses.
Yeah, and I think that, this whole concept of this being the game of the year for San Diego State is huge. I mean, I think that you have to understand, like, Utah playing San Diego State seemed like, for a Utah fan, someone, again, not for those of you who listen to the show every day, you guys are plugged in. Like, that San Diego State's good. But think about your average Joe fan. Like, they probably don't know that San Diego State just built Snapdragon Stadium and they've got all this momentum and they're trying to get into the Big 12 and they're trying to do all these things. Someone looking at the schedule is like, oh, yeah, we'll handle San Diego State. Like, it's fine. And for me, when I look at this matchup, coming up, I say, hey, San Diego State's got a lot to play for in this game. I mean, if you beat Utah in Utah, you got a shot to go undefeated this year and make some noise. And so that's why I say, for Utah, these next couple of weeks are going to be huge in terms of the college football playoff and really representing the Pac-12, because I know that's only week 1 or was only week 1, and the college football playoff committee tends to forget the impact in losing or winning in week 1 tends not to have that same effect at the end of the year. But when you get beat that bad, the way Oregon got beat, it would be huge from a Pac-12 standpoint for Utah to go out and make the college football playoff. And the problem is now what's required to do that is basically running the table, in my opinion. You're not going to be able to be a 2-loss team if you're Utah and get into the college football playoff, in my opinion. And so that's why I say, like, there's a lot of work ahead. But again, I have a tough time being like, yep, season's over, college football playoff opportunities are dead, now that you have one loss. Like, would we at all be surprised if this team ends up, 11-1 or whatever it would be at the end of the year? No one would be surprised by that. So that's why I say I'm not going to jump too far either direction. Do I think BYU is college football playoff good? Not yet. I think I would have loved to have seen, a little bit more out of the depth, and that's kind of the conversation for me around BYU. I don't doubt what that offensive line can do to teams. I don't doubt what they can do, as a team overall. But I need to see them again. Like, what do you do against Baylor? What do you do against Notre Dame? What do you do against Arkansas? Those are the 3 teams where I'm like, hey, if you can be in those games and, frankly, win those games, then, okay, we can talk about the college football playoff.
And, by the way, the latest AP Top 25 poll is out on a Tuesday morning. Utah down 6 spots to number 13 after the loss to Florida. Feels about appropriate. BYU rises 4 spots to number 21.
Whoa. Bro. Number 21.
Let me make sure that I have that right.
What?
BYU, after a dominating performance, only rises 4 spots.
They're not better than Kentucky?
To number 21. They are behind Kentucky, Wisco, North Carolina State,
bro,
who dropped 5
what?
spots. They're behind Pitt, but I think Pitt deservedly so is at 17.
Bro, what are you talking about?
I mean,
man?
it's really it's kind of surprising
that
it is kind of surprising that they are behind Kentucky, Wisconsin, and North Carolina State.
Yeah, this is some haterade out of the rankings, bro. This is there's no reason BYU shouldn't be top 20, and I'm not saying they got to be 15 or anything. But 20th is what I felt like would have been appropriate.
That was it's a little surprising to see that BYU did not get more love than that. I mean, that was a dominating performance out of BYU football. I mean, just the way the offensive line played, the ease with which they scored points, they showed explosiveness, they showed efficiency, they showed just absolute precision execution in that offense. And it's a little surprising. Even, Christopher Brooks finally got loose, later in the game. But the way that they ran with Puka Nacua, the sweeps, the different looks off of the sweeps, the way that the right side of the offensive line with Harris LaChance at guard instead of tackle.
Which I liked a lot, by the way.
I mean, they absolutely dominated South Florida up front. That was the kind of performance where you would expect them to break into the top 20. To be at 21 is a little disappointing, frankly. I mean, but again, what have we said all year about BYU's schedule? You're going to get opportunities now to continue to move up. You're playing Baylor Saturday. You're a 3-point favorite against Baylor now in Provo. This is the home opener. You would expect to see that same kind of performance. You're probably not going to dominate the way you dominated against South Florida, let's be honest. Baylor's a far superior program. But I would expect, hey, there's redemption on the line. You want revenge. This is your home opener. I think you have a point to prove against a Big 12 opponent coming into the conference next year. Like, there's every reason for BYU to come out and play well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that point you make about it being the first home game of the year, I mean, obviously it's going to be, amped in LaBelle. And I think that, look, I think that this whole concept around BYU getting hated on in the rankings continues to live on very healthily. Like, I think that it happens all the time. And I think that just being behind Kentucky, I'm just like, what logic does that make? I mean, it was clinical. You dismantled USF. Like, you handled them. And I get it. I'm sure we're getting comments about USF is a nobody or USF sucks whatever you want to say about USF, but frankly, that's who was put in front of them. And by the way, it wasn't like they won by 3 points. You won, 55-21? Like, you dominated that team.
But 50-21. But this is why, again, I say you got to score 60 points when you can. And the Kalani being a nice guy effect, I'm over it. Like there is no Mr. Nice Guy in this BYU football program. I think you have to put up 60, 65 points when you get the opportunity, and this is every year, and that's going to come to an end here, frankly, because your G5 opponent, your USFs of the world, you're not going to play those teams anymore. You're going to have a very difficult Big 12 schedule to execute. I think you have absolutely got to take your opportunities to pound guys.
Facts.
And I think you can't be so willing to play your 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
And more reps and get into your the back end of your depth chart. I think you have got to absolutely take these opportunities when you can. I look at the rest of what the world thinks. I mean, the line on the BYU game started at 2.5 in favor of BYU at 53 points. That's not a lot of points. That says to me that one team is not going to score a whole lot of points.
Yeah.
And, based on what we saw from BYU, I think BYU is a 30-point team week in and week out.
Right.
Because I think you roll out of bed in college football and you can score 21. I mean, we saw that out of a South Florida team, frankly, that's just not very good.
Yeah.
So I think you can, but looking at the current Vegas lines, I mean, it's 3.5 in favor of BYU. So
Yeah.
I would expect BYU to score 31 points, and something tells me that Baylor's probably going to score more than 27. So my guess is this is going to be a mid-30s game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of, after what happened against Baylor last year, I think there's a lot of, I'm not going to say this is a revenge game because I don't think there was that much on the line last year. But, I think that Baylor is someone who obviously is a Big 12 team, obviously someone you want to go out and make a statement against. Like, this is a team that if you can beat this team, that bodes well for you. I think that Baylor is quality enough. Like, the whole USF is trash thing won't exist if you beat Baylor by 7.
That's right.
Or even if you beat Baylor by 3. Like, all that matters is you beat them. And I think, frankly, this is a game, as we, look ahead a little bit here, but this is a game where Jaren's going to be tested. That Baylor defense is not just going to allow him to do whatever the hell he wants. You're not going to have, backs wide open in the end zone by 20 yards. Like, that's not going to happen against Baylor. And that's why I say I think that, okay, great, you handled USF, but it's time to move on from that, man. Like, you frankly, it's a little disrespectful that you were only put at number 21 in the country. Like, I think you need to come out with a point to prove again against Baylor.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would say about this situation is you're in a long, slow climb now. This is going to be a weeks-long climb for BYU.
Yeah.
By the way, not to go too far here without saying, what are your thoughts on Utah? I mean, Utah is all the way down to 13th. They're behind Florida, who's at 12th. But, I mean, they're surrounded by...
What, number 5?
Utah was number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you look at the teams that are ahead of them now. I mean, a Notre Dame team that lost... I mean, not handily. I mean, you lost to Ohio State as 8th.
Yeah.
Here's the AP top 10. USC moves into the top 10 already. We talked about brand.
This speaks to what you've been saying on it, I have to admit.
And you look at USC, and what I've always said about USC is they're just one season away from playing for a national championship.
Y'all feel me?
That's the reality of being a USC Trojan. They're now number 10. After all the turmoil and the destruction and all the transfers and the turnover, firing Clay Helton, bringing in, all this stuff. You're now 10th in the country.
That's right, T.
After beating Rice. So everybody who says, hey, USC, they suck. Well, guess what? They're 10th in the country.
Yeah.
Baylor is up 1 spot to number 9. Notre Dame down 3 to number 8. Oklahoma is up 2 to number 7. A&M is at number 6. Clemson actually is down 1 spot to number 5. The top 5 are Clemson at 5, Michigan up 4 spots to number 4. Ohio State actually beats Notre Dame and falls a spot to number 3. Georgia, after their dominating performance against Oregon, is up to number 2, and by a long, long margin with 44 first-place votes, 1,552 points in total. Alabama, roll Tide.
Yeah, I even
need
have
a Coach
problem.
Saban. Can I have a Coach Saban drop, please?
This is Coach Saban.
Thank you.
Yeah, I even have a problem with Alabama being number 1 in the country if we're going off of performances. how isn't Alabama continuing to be number 1 in the country when you played who you played, but then Georgia's number 2 when you dominated a team like Oregon that's everyone's cup of tea right now? That's what I don't get.
Number one, it's Alabama. It's Nick Saban. Coach Saban. It's Nick.
This is Coach Saban.
The thing, you know what bothers me? And we can have this conversation, I guess. What bothers me is that brand comes into play when we're just talking about football. Like when you're doing a top 25, teams in the country or whatever, like it shouldn't be about brand. It should be about X's and O's on the football field.
But on September 6th, brand plays a huge role. On November 6th?
How? Like how in a ranking does it matter?
Because you don't have results, and you're going off of, and this is what I'll say to BYU fan. Alabama absolutely annihilated Utah State,
but it's
55
Utah State.
to nothing.
It's
right.
Utah State.
But it's USF. Who's got any love for USF? With all due lack of respect, who's got any love for USF? I'm not. There's
with all due respect.
Yeah, there's nobody sitting here saying that USF is somehow a world beater. Is there anybody who would be surprised if Utah State took their Aggie Tears down to Tampa and beat South Florida? I would not. Alabama rolled what's a pretty damn solid football team in Logan. In all seriousness, Utah State's pretty solid. I mean, I think when you beat a team like Utah State 55 to nothing, it was never close, man. That's a dominating performance. I look at you look at how bad Oregon was. The question is, if you're Ohio State, you beat Notre Dame and you fell one. How pissed are the Buckeyes this morning?
I'm saying, it's not. You do have results. This I disagree that you don't have results. You have results. Like you have who you played, you have how you won the game, and you have how bad the other team was. Like that's what you have to go off.
So who was more dominating, Georgia or Ohio State?
Georgia, absolutely. Georgia was.
Then they got it right.
On Georgia, they did. On some level, yeah, but they got it wrong with Alabama.
So you think Georgia should be number one?
Yes, I think after you go out and you dominate a college football playoff team that was a college football playoff team last year, and they score. I mean, I can't remember the final score off the top of my head, but you dominated them. They were never in that game.
They scored 861 to 3.
Bo Nix
was the Georgia
terrible.
final.
Like you know what I mean? Like Georgia, Oregon has way more pull than Alabama and Utah State.
Right.
Like, that's why I say like. You do have results. You should just be going off of the on-field stuff, and I only say that off of SC. Like SC shouldn't get that much of a bump because they're SC. Like they need to earn that.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit because, as always, at 10 of the hour, every hour, it is time for Football at 50, presented by. Football at 50, as always, is presented by the guys and gals at Papa Murphy's Pizza, and I can only say it so many times. Papa Murphy's Pizza is our favorite pizza. We don't order the, hey, bring it to the door and stuck to the box top kind of thing. We don't do that. No, friends. We have the Traeger Ironwood 885, right? So what we do is we get on the Papa Murphy's app, and it is spectacular. We build our pizza custom, and I can tell you we use a traditional crust. Here's the inside scoop on Papa Murphy's. Use barbecue sauce on your pizza, because it is spectacular. So what we do is we do the crust, barbecue sauce, mozzarella cheese with green onion. Then you put their onion mix, because they have this really nice onion mix. Then they're going to put some more cheese on top of that with some pineapple. Yes, because as men with testosterone, we can say we like pineapple on pizza.
Facts.
Then you're going to throw that thing on the Traeger smoker, 425 degrees for 25, 30 minutes. It's going to come out in pure pizza bliss.
Yes.
And you're going to save 25% off your order at $25 or more when you use the code Monty25 at Papa Murphy's Pizza. Order.papamurphys.com. Or please, do me a favor, download the app. Super easy. Take home some cookies for the kids as well tonight at Papa Murphy's Pizza. Okay. So I think the biggest story in sports is the argument we're having right now, which is how much does reputation matter? Because I actually want to go to Greg Hawkins' comment, because I think it is very apropos of what most college football fans think, that the SEC will win the national championship this year. And I think that's why you have Alabama and Georgia at the top of the rankings right now. And again, the latest AP Top 25 is out. Alabama by a mile is number 1 in the AP Top 25 poll, with Georgia number 2. Ohio State actually falls after we, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame from South Bend, Indiana, where Rudy went, put out a hell of a performance against Ohio State and almost beat Ohio State until they didn't, and they didn't show up in the second half.
Yeah, good thing almost doesn't count.
And stuff. But the point is, Ohio State falls from their high haunches to number 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think reputation matters. And I think when we're sitting here on Tuesday, September 6th, it is no surprise at all to almost anybody that Alabama's 1, Georgia's 2, and Ohio State's number 3. I mean, if you just said, hey, Monty, would it be a surprise on September 6th if that's the order? I'd tell you absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that going to be the order on November 6th? It's not. I'm telling you right now, Ohio State's got not 1 but 2 losses in them, and especially if, Jigba's out for any amount of time, I think they're in real trouble. But Alabama and Georgia are tested. Their mettl's been tested. Alabama and Georgia are going to be there at the end of the year.
Yeah, I completely agree that Alabama and Georgia should be the top 2 teams in the country for 99.9% of the year. I just think that they're a cut above anybody else in the country. But my problem comes in when Alabama gets whatever the percentage was of first-place votes, some ridiculous number, and they played a nobody. With all due respect to Utah State, like, you're not someone who is in the college football playoff conversation, and I have a problem with that. And I think that when we sit here and we look at teams like Oregon, we look at Ohio State, we look at Georgia, you look at, obviously, we've been talking about BYU, but the big one, obviously, is SC. I don't like that teams like SC, who have been garbage for a decade, get one coaching change and some players and some recruiting and some momentum in the news cycle.
Caleb was pretty good.
I'm sure
Caleb was pretty good.
I'm sure you were pretty good. It's been 1 week. You're not proven. You're not Alabama. Get the hell out of here with that.
Wow.
Like, you're not. You're a Pac-10, Pac-12, pack of what's left team. And I'm not going to sit here and give USC the benefit of the doubt. You are not the Reggie Bush team of all those years ago right now. You need to prove who you are. I want to see you against the SEC, and I completely agree with Greg. The SEC is probably going to win the national championship this year. We all know that. The question is, who's going to represent the pack? Is it going to be SC or is it going to be Utah? Because I can guarantee you it's not going to be Oregon.
I don't think the Pac-12 has a seat at the table currently, I just think their reputation's been so mightily damaged as we talk football every hour, 10 to the hour, football at 50 presented by Papa Murphy's Pizza. I just think that USC is the only one that has a chance. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's Utah, Utah's going to have a spectacular resurgence, much as they did last year.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're going to beat Oregon twice, you've probably earned your way in last year. This year, I don't think that's good enough. There are 2 games of consequence on this Utah schedule, and I'm sure there's more. But as I look at this Utah schedule on paper, you got to beat San Diego State in 2 weeks. That is a statement game.
Right.
Absolutely. October 8th, Rice-Eccles Stadium with a tinge of cool air in the weather, in the breeze.
Finally.
Because we all know that it's 100 degrees for the next 10 years in Utah. But
that's it, Skippy.
On October 8th, when that air's a little cooler and that place is rowdy and it's popping and the muss is rocking and USC is on the other sideline, that's not a game that you can ho-hum through.
Mm-hmm.
That's a game where Utah has to come out on the turf at Rice-Eccles and let everybody know last year was not a fluke. But that starts with Southern Utah this weekend, San Diego State the weekend after that. It is that simple. That is your path to glory.
Yes.
You have got to win the Pac-12, and that starts by beating USC October 8th. It is that simple. By the way, don't let it be lost on you that that's the same weekend that Notre Dame and BYU will be in Vegas at Allegiant Stadium.
Facts.
So big games every weekend of consequence right here in the state of Utah, and they're not. It's not going to be a slow train or a slow buildup. Every single weekend, BYU and Utah will be measured for their performance on the field. And if you're a BYU fan, every weekend matters because, 1, you're an independent, and I think we all realize that. But 2, the other story here is that you are loaded. You are, hey, we took care of USF. Now we've got Baylor. Then we've got Oregon. It just keeps on coming.
Yes.
And by the time you get to Las Vegas in early October, and two of our listeners are going to be there watching that game that we're going to tell you about in a minute. By the time BYU gets to Las Vegas against Notre Dame, the script is going to be written. We are going to be well aware of where BYU is.
Yep.
Now, I don't love the number 21 ranking. I think it's absolutely a slap in the face. But it is what it is. And now you know that your road's a little steeper to get to the top of the college football world. And it is until next year when you're in the Big 12. Then, I mean, the criteria for getting into the college football playoff all of a sudden crystallizes, and you have a real good idea of where you are. But teams like San Diego State, your hopes of any kind of Cinderella season came to an end with whatever that was at Snapdragon Stadium over the weekend. The hugely disappointing performance out of the Aztecs.
Yes.
I mean, there are teams already, and it's most teams. Let's be honest about it. It's probably 6 of 10 teams are out of the college football playoff already.
It's really despicable.
I mean, Notre Dame, I don't see a road back to the top for Notre Dame. And I'm a Notre Dame fan. I don't see a road back to the top. You had your chance against Ohio State, and you let it go. Was it a tough game on the road? Sure it was. Was it at the shoe? Yes, it was. Was it difficult? Sure. You lost.
I think that's absolutely true. My only thing is the College Football Playoff Committee has this habit of forgetting what happened early in the year.
No, Ronaya ain't coming through that door anytime soon.
Listen, call Manti up, bro. We need your help, bro. We need you. We need you, man. Call him. Get him on the field. Put the pads on. Put the leg pads on.
It's
Let's
not
go,
defense.
bro. Let's go.
They've got like 86 quarterbacks at Notre Dame. Anyway, Football 50, every hour, 10 of the hour, presented by our good friends at Papa Murphy's Pizza. I always tell you, support small business. I love our guys at Papa Murphy's Pizza. I shop South Jordan right off of 4,000 there. I love that store. I know that when I order my pizza at Papa Murphy's, it's going to be exactly the way I wanted it because they build each pie custom for you, right? Like you're not getting just some run-of-the-mill pizza. You're getting the exact pizza you want, whether you go with one of their standard, like their pepperoni pizzas out of this world. But for guys like me and Jake, we order our pizza custom, and they love doing that. And the thing that I love about Papa Murphy's is I know I'm always getting a discount when I use, promo code Monty25. I'm getting 25% off my order at $25 or more, and I know it's going to be exactly the way I asked it for. And if it's not, I know the people in my store, they're going to make it right because they care about my experience. Because as small business owners, they want us back in the shop every single weekend. And guess what? We're at Papa Murphy's every single weekend. Use promo code Monty25 to save 25% off your order of $25 or more. Hey, I want to remind you, we are sending 2 listeners to see BYU and Notre Dame play in the Shamrock Series in Las Vegas. My goodness, that is rapidly approaching. We are about 4 weeks away.
Yes.
It's 2 nights at the Palms Casino Resort and Hotel. It is 2 tickets to the game at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It's a $250 Maverick gift card to get you there. I mean, it is going to be spectacular. It is now looking like that is a really important game on the BYU schedule. And all you have to do to win that is go to any of the 5 Utah locations of Barbecue Pit Stop. Now, you can find them in Layton, Lehigh, Logan, St. George. Hello to all of our St. George listeners. I got a great tweet yesterday from one of our St. George listeners in Raul who said, Aloha, who said that he's a Dixie State alum.
Okay.
Appreciate you, man. He was a football player down there. Raul, really appreciate you being a listener of the show. He said he went into the Barbecue Pit Stop, got his job done. Yes, if you're in St. George, get into the Barbecue Pit Stop. Fill out the slip, drop it in the box, and then join us in Lehigh on Saturday, October 17th. That's just September 17th. I guess that's a week from Saturday almost.
Yeah.
That's a week. Is that already a week from Saturday?
It's a week from this coming Saturday.
That's insanity.
Yes.
That's crazy. A week from Saturday, we'll be at the Barbecue Pit Stop in Lehigh. Our good friends at Papa Murphy's are going to provide pizzas for us to smoke on the Traegers at Barbecue Pit Stop. We're also going to have some wings. We're going to watch BYU go duck hunting at Oregon. That's going to be spectacular. Then at halftime of that game, we are going to pull the winner of the trip for 2 to Vegas to see BYU and Notre Dame in the Shamrock Series. Cannot wait. Join us Saturday, September 17th. Barbecue Pit Stop in Lehigh. It's going to be a party. It is absolutely going to be a party. I am super excited about it, and it's all presented by Devery Davis at Academy Mortgage. Thanks to our friends at the Davis Lending Team for always supporting the show.
You're listening to The Monty Show, my favorite peeps. I'm Devery Davis with the Davis Lending Team, powered by Academy Mortgage. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, you don't know what you're doing, you bought multiple homes, second homes, investment properties, multifamily, we've got you covered. Our office consists of everybody it takes to do your loan, from processing to underwriting to doc departments. We do it all right here. We're not waiting on Tucumcari Carrier or Walla Walla, Washington to answer an email. We take care of it here. The housing market's changed. Prices are dropping. It's the greatest time to buy a house. There's no such thing as a dumb question. If you have any questions, you give me a shout. I'll walk you through it. Have a great day. Tell my money guys I said what's up.
What's up, Devery Davis at Academy Mortgage? Appreciate him being a big supporter of the show. Call him today, 801-543-9666. NMLS number 278545. Devery Davis and the Davis Lending Team at Academy Mortgage are equal housing lenders. And, I know we talk about it all the time on this show, and we talk about the fact that listen, I think a lot of small business owners support this show. In fact, I don't think I know. Whether it's your local Papa Murphy's owner, whether it's a guy like Devery Davis, Barbecue Pit Stop, Alma Wayman at Wayman Brothers Construction, a lot of small business owners support this show. We need you to support our sponsors. So when you get the opportunity and you're going to have pizza, make sure you go to Papa Murphy's.
Careful.
Make sure you go to Papa Murphy's and you tell them, hey, I heard about you on the Monty Show. Call Devery Davis when you need a mortgage. And again, if you're looking for a refi, or if you think that, hey, I can't afford a down payment, sure you can. Devery Davis has a program to get you into that home you've been waiting to buy. Call him today, 801-543-9666 for Devery Davis at Academy Mortgage. Talking a lot of football on the show. Coming up here in about 28 minutes, we'll shift gears and talk Utah Jazz basketball because they still haven't made a trade. Just to take a temperature, are you surprised the Jazz have not made a trade yet?
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting time. I felt really confident over the weekend that there was a high opportunity for a Bogdanovich to the Lakers deal to get done. And I still think that deal gets done. And again, this is all my opinion. I'm not sitting here saying that this is like information we got or anything. This is my opinion. But I just think that it makes too much sense. I think that Bogdanovich and frankly Conley too, I think that those two guys could serve a very straightforward and unique purpose on the Los Angeles Lakers with what they have going on. And I also think when you start to see the rumblings around Twitter, ESPN talking about it, sources coming out and saying this or that about how the Lakers' 2 first-round picks are, quote, the most powerful picks in the league right now, you start to see the tea leaves. And I think I'm going to keep saying this, and I'll die on this hill. Danny Ainge has run the offseason this year in the NBA, and I think that it wouldn't surprise me the least bit if Danny Ainge went out and got those 2 picks and really sort of rounded off the portion of tearing the team down so that he can move through and transition to building the team back up. Because I still think that this team, while everyone says that, life is terrible right now and the team's going to suck and Colin Sexton's not that guy, pal, like everyone's hating on it, I actually think that this turnaround is not going to take years and years and years. I think we're probably in a 2-year window where, like, this coming year they won't be a playoff team, but that following year, would that be 24, 25, I guess, or no, 23, 24, next season, I think that you're in a much better place, and I think you're at least competitive and pushing for a playoff spot, And that's why I say I don't think that if you're a Utah Jazz fan, you should be in panic mode right now.
All right, let's get some of your thoughts in here because a lot of people are in on college football. Patrick Boren, he's a Baylor fan. One of them Waco wackos. Mm-hmm. He says, I also keep hearing that if Baylor wins, it will be an upset. LOL. So number 10 beats number 25, and it's an upset. I think the boys in Vegas like BYU in this game. It's up to 3.5. It opened a full point below that.
Well, and they have a job to do. Remember that. I mean, you're talking about Las Vegas. Like, they need to make money.
But I think usually they're pretty close. I mean, you go back and you look at where the line was. Very rarely are they more than 10, 20 points. That almost never happens. You look at the lines, and you start to see that there's a lot of people that are really close in Vegas.
Right.
When it's 3.5, that tells me that more and more people are starting to feel like BYU is going to win the game. Mm-hmm. Would it be an upset if BYU beat Baylor and Provo? Based on the early season rankings, yeah, it would. Yes, it would. In my mind, it's not an upset. I think BYU is a better team at home. than Baylor is. If that game was in Waco, it'd be an upset if BYU won it.
Right.
But it's in Provo. It's at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. And my feeling is that BYU should win this game. BYU should be favored to win this game. With what we saw on that offensive line, and I know I keep saying that, BYU has an unbelievably athletic offensive line. You take a guy like Harris LaChance and you plug him inside at guard, that's a game changer for this offensive line. You look at the physical way that, Pini Katoa is running the football. I was really surprised at the mix and the rotation that we saw in the backfield between Chris Brooks and Pini Katoa. I thought that was a really nice 1-2, and it's not even thunder and lightning. It's thunder and thunder. Like, they both have power and explosiveness. That was the other thing about Chris Brooks that I thought was really nice. He was through the hole in a blink. So I feel like offensively, and I haven't even, by the way, mentioned the explosiveness, and we'll see what, how Puka Nacua is, and it'd be nice to get Gunner back this week and see if he's healthy enough to play. You have all the weapons on the field, and this team is going to be very difficult to beat, and I don't care who's on the other side of the football. You bring Baylor to Provo. With BYU having revenge on the mind, something tells me that you're going to get an absolute battle on the field. And,
all gas, no
listen,
break.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
Tanner Plummer, the executive producer of The Monty Show, says, well, BYU is the favorite, Patrick. So, BYU is favored, and they should be. It's at home. It's at home. You can't have it both ways, though. I mean, we can't sit here and say that the AP poll matters. I think it matters.
It does.
Does it determine upset or not? No, it doesn't.
Well, and I don't think it doesn't determine favorites or what's an upset and what's not. Like, I think it just gives you the framework to have a conversation, if I'm being honest. Like, I think BYU and, frankly, obviously Utah are good enough to go anywhere and beat anybody on any given day. I mean, are the odds of is BYU really going to have any chance to beat Alabama? No, obviously not. But I think that for most teams they see, if they play their game and they execute to their best, they're going to have a good day. And that's why I say I just feel like, BYU, if we're being realistic about how this college football ranking is going to go all year, as it does every year, BYU is going to have trouble cracking the top 10. It's the case every single year. They're going to have trouble. They're going to have to be 8-0, 9-0, 10-0 to crack that top 10. And I think that, frankly, I just don't think that's a possibility this year. I think you're a two-loss team at the end of the day, and I think that's because of attrition and injuries, and frankly, your depth is going to get tested. I do truly believe in my heart of hearts that Jacob Conover is going to get significant reps this year. I don't think Jaron makes it the whole year. He's never been that guy. And so that's why I say when you look around and you start saying, okay, what is our opportunity to get into the college football playoff this year? How can we break the top 10? Well, Jaron's got to stay healthy. That offensive line's got to do its thing, and you got to be undefeated. Yep.
Jerem Tracy says at Patrick Bourne, it'll be a close game most likely. BYU got a decent chance to pull the upset. Look, I think that BYU's got a better than average chance. I mean, I would say Baylor has a puncher's chance of winning this game because they're clearly capable. Asgill says if BYU is the favorite and win, then no upset. There is no upset there if BYU wins. This is not an upset.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner said, let's be real. The only poll that matters is the college football playoff poll that comes out in November. I don't know about that because to be in position to get into the college football playoff,
the AP matters.
Yeah, the AP absolutely matters. Asgill says game is in Provo, makes a difference. Huge. Absolutely it does. No doubt about it. Greg Hawkins says Vegas odds are normally pretty close. I agree, Greg. I think when you look at the final outcomes of those games and the spreads, I mean, they're not making money in Vegas because their spreads are way wrong.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. I just think that, we'll see. Patrick says, so Baylor having proven themselves better than BYU last year matters none? Not at all.
No, it's last year.
What happened last year doesn't matter. I mean, when you look at the national championship game, Alabama's ranked ahead of Georgia. Does that matter that Georgia is the reigning national champion and beat Alabama pretty handily in the championship game? Apparently not, because the entire world, based on the number of votes, thinks Alabama's the best team in the country. And by the way, they are the best team in the country. So I don't think what happened last year matters at all. And by the way, the game's not being played in Waco. It's being played in Provo. And you got to come to altitude, and you got to come and deal with that crowd. And I mean, this is a huge game, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very different. Tanner says, either way, it's going to be a close game. I totally agree with that. The Blind Swordsman DS, my guy, what's up? He says, Monty, I get what you are saying, but what about Georgia wrecking Oregon, but then Alabama beat Utah State? Oregon would wreck Utah State. I don't think Oregon will wreck anybody. I think that we're starting to understand that There's a talent problem at Oregon. And I think that they have athletes. They don't have football players. And I think that's a big deal. And I think when you look at what happened, I mean, obviously you lost Mario Cristobal. His program has gone there. I mean, you're putting in a guy that is inexperienced as a head coach. You're putting in players that are inexperienced in his system. It is not easy to just do what Ryan Day at Ohio State did.
That's
now,
out of the window.
Urban left them so unbelievably talented and athletic, it was going to be hard to fall off. But guess what? They've even fallen off a little bit from when Urban was. Look at that defense. I mean, and again,
Yeah.
I'm a Notre Dame fan. That defense at Ohio State should have been able to handle Notre Dame's offense, and they couldn't for a lot of that game. And by the way, on the other side of that, Notre Dame's defense didn't have very much trouble handling Ohio State's offense in the first half. My point is, this is not Urban Meyer's Ohio State Buckeye team anymore. This is not Urban Meyer's Ohio State Buckeye football program anymore. So you see Oregon, who wasn't even at the top of the mountain. I mean, I thought Utah was the best team in the conference all year last year, and they beat Oregon twice. So Oregon wasn't the best team in the conference, let alone one of the best teams in the country last year, and they've fallen significantly from where they were at that point. I think Utah State, don't undervalue Utah State. We joke a lot about Aggie Tears. Utah State is a good football program.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you have Logan Bonner at quarterback, you have a chance to win games. Attrition, graduation, we all have that. My point is, Utah State getting beaten soundly by Alabama is about Alabama. It's not about Utah State. And I think Alabama's a hell of a football team, but I also think Utah State on scale is a hell of a football team as well. And I actually think they could give Oregon just about anything they would want. And if that game was played in Logan, I'd probably take Utah State to win that game.
No, you would not.
I think I would.
No, you would not.
Depending on when on the calendar and where it was played.
No way, dude.
Okay.
No
and
way,
listen,
man.
I'm telling you now, Utah State is not going to be easy to handle for anybody. Now,
Yeah, I'm not saying they're a pushover, but you can't. Nobody in their right mind's taking Utah State over Oregon.
my
even
biggest
with
question
Oregon's performance.
it's not the Alabama game that worries me. It's the Week 1 performance that worries me for Utah State. That's the game that worries me. Let's see what they do in Week 3.
Yeah.
And then we can revisit this. Let's see. Asgill said this year. That was last year. Totally agree. Jerem Tracy, BYU last year was ravaged by injuries. They are much healthier right now. I'm a little worried about Gunner. I mean, that's a guy that you need on the football field if you're going to reach your highest of highs. Gunner Romney's got to be on the field.
Yeah.
And I think we really saw a bullet being dodged with Puka Nakua's ankle, because that looked
that could have been a broken leg, bro.
Oh my God. That looked horrendous. Absolutely, it looked horrendous. And I don't know that I would. Yeah, I don't know, man. That was scary to me. All right, without further ado, here on the Monty Show, let's get you our newest sponsor. It is Tri-Day Trading. Now, I know that a lot of us dabble and dip in stocks. I certainly am one of those guys. And a lot of us that rode the AMC and the GameStop wave, a lot of us like to
What
pretend.
a time.
Yeah, we like to pretend that we're day traders. We're not, because we don't know what we're doing. And that's why you've got to check out TryDayTrading.com, because the best part about Tri-Day Trading is they know not everybody's a fit to be a day trader. But the best part about Tri-Day Trading is that they can make you a day trader. They have an established system. They have an established track record with real-world results. And if you don't buy into it, you get to trade with their money. Go and lose their money. And here's the ultimate part about Tri-Day Trading. When you register for their free webinar, you have no obligation. You have nothing up front to find out, hey, you know what? I've dabbled in stocks. Can I really do this? Can I get out of my 9-to-5 grind and become a full-time, everyday trader? Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And if you trust the guys at Tri-Day Trading and you follow their advice, you get a coach, you get infrastructure, you get support. This isn't one of those things where, well, I took a webinar, I took a class, I went through the whole thing, now I can't get them to answer my call. They support you, man. Tri-Day Trading is fantastic because they understand your situation. They know that you have a full-time job, but they're teaching you how to transition from that full-time job. If you want to transition into a full-time day trader, you can do that. Maybe this is a side hustle for you. They can help you develop that as well. And we're not talking about little trades. You can spend as much or as little of your own money as you want. But when you start this program out, you're trading their dollars, man, to teach you how to do it and to show you the world is a possible place for you when you go to TryDayTrading.com. Get there now, register for their free webinar, and watch the webinar. And I think what you're going to see is this is not your traditional, hey, XYZ, give us your money.
Sign
and
a contract.
go
Here's
away.
a bag of money.
No,
you're out.
Not at Tri-Day Trading. I think the guys at Tri-Day Trading, we talked to Ryan and all the guys at Tri-Day Trading, and we really feel like, again, we talk about small business partners on this show. Tri-Day Trading, they're that dude. They're the guys that built this thing from the ground up. They work really hard no matter where you're listening to the show, and I know that we have a lot of global listeners on this show. Tri-Day Trading, anywhere in the country, anywhere in North America, Tri-Day Trading has a program for you, and you get their webinar for free. All you have to do is go to tridaytrading.com and watch their webinar, register for it, watch their webinar, and see where it takes you, because that's what you have to explore. Always explore the possibilities.
Yes.
So if you're a stock market guy, if you're a money market guy, and you've always wanted to get your toe in the water, but you were too scared, go lose Tri-Day Trading's money. Don't risk your own money. Go to Tri-Day Trading right now, register for their webinar, and see where it takes you. Because trust me, talking to the guys at Tri-Day Trading, I'm really fired up about it. I love the stock market. I love the games. I love the mentality that goes into it. And the most impressive thing about Tri-Day Trading is that you really understand that this is not something that they did fly by night.
Right.
I mean, there is a program. There is, I mean, you're going to trade their money.
Yes.
And you're going to split the profit with them. So it's not that they're taking the profit from their money. You're going to trade their money and split their money and split their profit from their money.
Yeah, and I think the coolest thing is it gives you, like, for all of you out there who wanted something where, you have the 9 to 5, but you're burned out on the 9 to 5. Like, we share that, like in our, you all know our story, or maybe there's some new folks here. Like, we had our 9 to 5 corporate job when we were doing this show for a long time, and we were just now, it took us years to transition to being able to do this show full time. So the reason that we partnered with Tri-Day Trading is because of the program and that whole thing where you can trade their money to learn.
Yes.
So that you don't have to feel like, oh man, like I'm not going to be able to pay rent or pay my mortgage or whatever. I'm going to be in a bad spot financially because I tried this. And the big thing here is that you can call them, you can go on their website, and you can go through the webinar. And that's the biggest thing. I really want you guys to understand. The webinar portion isn't just to have you go to their website and so they can get more people to the website. The whole point of the webinar is so you can watch it and get an idea of what this actually looks like, because all it takes to go from where you are now to where you want to be is that bridge. And a lot of people struggle to create that bridge. What's my thing going to be? How am I going to get out of this 9 to 5 grind? And that's what this can be. But it all starts with the webinar, and then from there, and it's on their website, you can see all the testimonials. Yeah. It's video testimonials, people literally talking about their story and how now they're making several $100s a day. Because that's all it takes. I mean, if you think about it, to put this into perspective, like if you just take a 30-day month and you make $100 per day, that's at $100 per day. That's not that much money, right? If you think about it. So that's why we decided to bring Tri-Day on, and we really appreciate them partnering with us because we wanted to bring you a solution like that.
Yeah, and by the way, they're based in Lehigh, Utah, so they're a local company.
Local.
I just keep saying that.
Yes.
They've been in business since 2008. They have all kinds of programs that fit you. So check them out online. Welcome our newest sponsor, tridaytrading.com.
Yes.
Thrilled to work with them, and I cannot tell you, huge Jazz fans at tridaytrading.com, so just really thrilled to be partnering with the guys at Tri-Day Trading. It is so much fun. I am really looking forward to seeing how you guys do with Tri-Day Trading, because it really is it's a 6-week course. You get great coaching. Check them out.
That's what I love about it. It's just personal. It's just like they're really invested in trying to make you successful, and that's what's awesome.
TridayTrading.com. Let's get a couple more of your thoughts in here on BYU, Baylor, Utah. The big Mugamba says Baylor's secondary needs to tighten up if they want to beat BYU. Wasn't impressed with their play against Albany. Looked like BYU from 5 years ago.
Facts.
I think week 1, your first real game, is very difficult to execute. I look at Utah in this exact same light. Utah, if the Florida game was this week instead of last week, Utah's beaten the Florida Gators. Like, and with all due respect to my guy Utah Pig Bus, and I love me some Utah Pig Bus. Mm-hmm. He was talking about how Anthony Richardson's some transformative player and he had a breakout game. No, he didn't. He did not. He's a career 62% passer.
And with all due respect.
And really, let's be honest, he's a sub 60% passer. He's a guy who has to run to win. And the Utes simply did not tackle him and anybody else very well.
That's right, T.
It's shocking how poor the tackling was, how poor the assignment was,
Yes.
how poor the execution on defense was.
And maybe is that a result of not hitting a lot in the preseason?
Well, and I think that's a huge discussion because there's a lot of college teams, and I know we talk about it a lot on the Monty Show presented by the Advocates, UtahAdvocates.com. I think there's a lot of teams who don't like to hit in the preseason, who don't like to hit in fall camp. You got to pop pads in fall camp. You have to. And I know that injuries are a thing, and everybody worries about that. You got to pop pads, dude, because what we're seeing is now Utah is in the exact same spot they were in last year where, hey, we lost a big game. Hey, now we got to come back. We got to climb the mountain, and we're just short of going to the college football playoff. And for my money, there's no reason for Utah to be in this spot. Hit in fall camp.
Yeah.
I get it. You're worried about injuries. Football hurts. Injuries happen. Build depth. Be a quality program, pop pads in fall camp, and let's go win football games. The shocking part of that Florida game was not that their uniforms are slippery because of the humidity. Stop it. The grass was not slippery because of the humidity, because Florida didn't have any trouble on their own turf. It's grass, man. You have on cleats. The issue was you weren't ready to pop. You weren't ready to hit. You weren't ready to tackle. That was the issue for Utah.
Yeah.
That's why they lost that game. It is that simple in my mind.
100% agree.
The interception is not why they lost that game. Cam Rising is not why they lost that game. They lost that game because they were not prepared to play physical football. So when I look at things like the Big Magamba's comment, I don't disagree. I do not disagree. Jerem Tracy says, hey, if BYU loses to Notre Dame by 1 point, I might brag. Okay. They should be. BYU is better than Notre Dame. BYU is better than Notre Dame. I've watched a lot of Notre Dame football in my life. And having watched just about every snap of that Ohio State game, this is a flawed Notre Dame team. And for everything I say about Brian Kelly had a system. He was an absolute authoritarian in that system, which alienated a lot of football players. But it yielded results on the field. This Notre Dame team is not as disciplined as Brian Kelly had been in the past.
Right.
And I think there's a transition for his players away from Brian Kelly. And I think that's going to be difficult. BYU should beat Notre Dame. Again, we're weeks away from that game. We're a month away from that game.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens here. Mike Pressler says, I've bragged about a lot of losses, but that's life as a Horns fan. It is. By the way, did you see what Steve Sarkisian, the head coach at Texas, said? He owes his career to Nick Saban. Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of the Texas Longhorns, who was, by all accounts, a raging alcoholic at USC,
Right.
had fallen way, 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 way off the coaching radar.
Right.
Coach Saban hired him to be his offensive coordinator.
This is Coach Saban.
And he says, Steve Sarkisian says, it saved his coaching career.
Yeah.
That's a pretty heavy thing to say for a guy like Sark. And it tells you the power of a guy like a Nick Saban.
Absolutely, man.
I think it speaks volumes about him. Let's see. Asgill says no other fan base anywhere gets excited about looking good in close losses. I don't know about that. I think there's a lot of tryhards. Greg Hawkins says our offense looked fine. Got to get the wide receivers in action more. Our defense needs work. Yeah, it does.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. But I will say the secondary on the defense looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Those linebackers need to get more comfortable.
I just can't believe the tackling was such a struggle, man. I just don't
And that it
care
was.
if their jerseys were sweaty or it was moist out or, the game was played in some foreign land that, made it difficult to tackle. Like, it just doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like, you have to be disciplined. You have to be ready. You have to be in a place where you're not cramping up constantly. And this conversation around, sports science and taking care of your bodies and feeding your body correctly so it can perform in adverse environments and difficult situations. BYU's crushing the game. Notice they didn't have any cramping issues. Notice that their bodies were fine. And I get it. It wasn't Florida proper, right? You weren't playing the Gators. You were playing USF. But all the same, the weather's damn near the same. You're a couple hundred miles away or whatever it is. Like, I just am not going to sit here and give Utah the benefit of the doubt or any kind of slack or break. You're Kyle Whittingham. This is the defense that lost you the game, and now it's time to make some adjustments.
Yeah, and I think he will. I mean, I think Witt is notorious for being a guy that makes incredible adjustments very quickly.
Agreed.
I mean, I only look at the career arc of a Chase Hansen. The adjustment, the tweak from quarterback to safety, linebacker, like he's in the NFL now on a practice squad, granted.
Like, for instance.
But, I mean, that's who Kyle Whittingham is. Kyle Whittingham's going to have that defense tuned up and ready to go. It's unfortunate because they were a player or two on defense away from beating Florida. And that's the frustrating part about being a Ute fan this week, because you got a huge win out of BYU, and it was the performance that we all thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, it was a performance that you hoped Utah wouldn't put out. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest issue. So when you struggle the way that Utah struggled to execute on defense, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
That is it is very frustrating. Good morning, Justin Bingham says, great show, Monty. Appreciate that. Hello. Brent Burnett says Sarkisian needed personal help as he was a mess. And when we say a mess, he needed a mop and a bucket.
Yeah.
Because homeboy was an absolute disaster. At USC, he was a disaster. That was unbelievable. Brett Burnett says, glad he got some help. He did. There was an intervention done with Steve Sarkisian that absolutely changed the course of his life. Tyler Dopp says, what'd y'all think of BYU wide receiver core? I feel like they have a lot of great wideouts. I think this is, and I never thought I would say this, I think they're deeper this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got a lot of talent. Obviously, Puka is extremely talented, veteran, ready to go.
Hey, it's Mr. Nakua.
Excuse me, Mr. Nakua. I just think that he's ready to go. And I think that the rest of when you have a veteran like that will lead the wide receiver group in the room, it allows you to have leadership, and it allows your guys to all be on the same page. Because that's the thing. Like, all of these different position groups, you just need that one guy who sort of leads the bunch, and then they'll all follow him, and everything will be good. Everyone will be on the same page, just doing their job.
Yeah.
And that's how you go out and you execute on the football field, which ultimately lets you win games. And that's what I think we're starting to see at BYU, where you have Jaron really sort of growing into this leadership role. Hopefully he stays healthy. Hopefully, he plays every game on the schedule. I have doubts about that, but we'll see. I think part of his leadership is staying healthy and making better decisions. So that's why I say when you look at, like, the quarterback room, you look at the wide receiver room, hell, you even look at Harris going inside on the line. Like, I think they're just in a good spot right now. That said, it was USF. Like,
I still maintain Cody Epps has the potential to be the breakout star in this wide receiver group. I mean, I worry about Gunnar Romney being healthy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is very rare that a guy sustains significant injuries and comes back from that on a regular basis. And this is your thought about Jaron, when you're hurt all the time, you're hurt all the time.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if Jaron's on the field, is Gunnar on the field, is Cody Epps a guy that can step up and fill the gap for BYU? I mean, I want to say that he had 4 catches last week. Now, the average was terrible. But, I mean, I think when you look at Cody Epps had 4 for 26 yards, 6.5 average. I mean, obviously, the other guy that we haven't said word one about is Dallin Holker. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought he had a huge performance in that game, obviously with the touchdown, but I just think now you have multiple weapons at every level.
Yeah.
You have guys that could take the top off. You have guys that can play in the mid-range, in the middle of the field, the out pattern, the curl. Like, you have every facet that you need. Mason Wake doing a really good job catching the football, even though there's that one you wish he hadn't caught. But
right.
I just think offensively, BYU is in the best place that Kalani's ever had this offense in. And I think to answer your question specifically, Tyler, yeah, I think this wide receiver group is really good. I am really excited to watch that group play every single week. Yeah. I think they're one of the ones that you pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Vorlon Ingalls, 1811, says it was hotter when BYU played since Utah played at night. Well, and I think Tampa, the issue in Tampa was you just sat around for so long.
Yeah.
And it was so humid.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you didn't have that built-in excuse if you were Utah. Like, BYU could have easily come out and struggled and not tackled well and not executed, but they came out and handled their business. And that's why I say I'm tired of people like Utah Pig Bus making excuses about this football team. Like, Like,
Well, I mean,
listen, dude.
it's tough. It's
Like,
tough when your team goes to the Swamp.
But
it's a huge game.
Yeah,
man.
but there's not. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here because it's the defense. If this was the offense we were talking about, okay, kind of can understand that. You know, it's Kyle Whittingham. He's a defensive guy, not an offensive guy. Okay, I could kind of get that. But because it's the defense, man, like this, I would have expected. And I've come to expect, frankly, we've been conditioned to expect that Kyle Whittingham's defenses will be ready to go no matter what the ask is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I say, I'm not trying to be a douche about this, but at some point we have to stop saying the grass was wet or the jerseys were too slick. Like, no, man, you guys just tried to tackle guys around the shoulders instead of around the knees, and that costs you. Like, that's what happened.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't get beat by Anthony Richardson. That's the.
It's not a transformative performance. The guy had 178 yards or whatever.
And by the way, for everybody who doesn't follow Pig Bus on Twitter, you really should. He's a really good follower. He's a good dude.
He is.
I mean,
Absolutely is.
I think I met Utah Pig Bus for the first time in 2013. And he's one of the best Utah fans on the planet. So go follow him on Twitter, Utah Pig Bus. You can follow me, The Monty Show. You don't want to follow Jake.
No, you don't need to. You got me right here. It's
The
all
Monty
fine.
Show
Yeah.
is presented by the Advocates Injury Attorneys, UtahAdvocates.com. The thing about the Utah Advocates, again, and I know that we talk about small business. I've known Matt Driggs for 10 years. He was a guy that supported my show when we were back at 1320 K-Fan, the sports leader, here in Salt Lake City. And it's great to have Matt and all of the fabulous attorneys at the Advocates back on the program, UtahAdvocates.com. When you're in an accident, when you've been injured, when you are less than 100%, your confidence is damaged as much as your body is damaged. You need somebody who has the energy, the know-how, and the ability to fight for you because you don't have the energy. You don't have what you need to be your whole self. Let the Advocates do that for you. Let the Advocates defer your medical bills. Let the Advocates be the ones to decide if you have a case. I know so many people that get in car accidents and they're like, well, you know what? I don't really have a case because my friend Jimmy's father's, son's, cousin's, sister's coworker who works at Amazon and drops packages on doorsteps said it was my fault. Don't go that route. Go to the injury attorney experts at the Advocates, UtahAdvocates.com. You don't even have to call them. When you go to the UtahAdvocates.com, you get on their website, and there's a chat function where you can chat with them at the Advocates, and they're going to tell you, hey, XYZ, then set up the free consultation. Because, again, notice you haven't paid anything yet. Your medical bills will be deferred. Your consultation's free, and you do not pay the Advocates anything if and until they win your case. You have nothing to lose. Call and ask the questions that you have, those needs for.
Yes.
How am I going to pay my medical bills and my rent? Don't worry about that stuff when you go to the Advocates. UtahAdvocates.com. The Advocates Injury Attorneys present the Monty Show live every single day. Today, we are still on the Kona Coast. By the way, trying to work it out. I see a lot of people asking about the Harris LaChance conversation we have every week on this show. Trying to work it out with Harris to have him on the show this week. And at different times slightly, obviously, for those of you in Utah that are not here in Kona, Hawaii, we are 4 hours behind you. So currently right now it's 1:30 in Utah. It's 9:30 in the morning here on the Kona Coast.
Yeah.
So, we've got our plan is to do a show tomorrow, which will be Wednesday and Thursday. Then we'll be off on Friday. We'll be in Maui next week. So we'll be in a different location next week in Maui, and we'll also do shows next week. So we'll continue to roll on, and then don't forget, on Saturday, September 17th, we'll be doing our Football Saturday show live at Barbecue Pit Stop in Lehigh. Steve and the guys there have it all ready for us. All of our good friends at Papa Murphy's Pizza, who I just cannot say enough about the support that Papa Murphy's has given us on this show for that event. My friends, if you don't know about Papa Murphy's Pizza, I would highly recommend that you get to papamurphys.com. Download the app. That's absolutely the best way to do it. Download the app, order your pizza, and then come join us on Saturday, September 17th, and have some of the best pizza in the pizza business from Papa Murphy's.
No one goes all in on made-from-scratch freshness like Papa Murphy's. Because when you go all in, people notice. Go all in with the Triple Pet Pizza for just $11.99. Papa Murphy's. Change the way you pizza.